To every woman of South Africa watching and listening today, happy Women's Day and happy Women's Month. To the mothers holding families together, to the daughters finding their own way, to the grandmothers who paved the road we now walk on, to the women in the cities and the women in the villages, to the women behind desks and the women behind counters, the women still healing and the women already thriving. Wherever you find yourself today, however your year has gone so far, I want you to receive this. You are seen, you are valued, and you belong here. Let's go back to the 9th of August, 1956, when over 20,000 women marched to the Union buildings in Pretoria. They marched against the pass laws. They carried petitions in their hands, determined to be heard. And when they arrived, they didn't shout, they didn't scream, they did not become violent. They stood in silence for 30 minutes. That silence said, "We see you, and we are not moving." That day is why South Africa marks this month as Women's Month. But if we are honest with ourselves, most of us know the history, and we just stop there. We know the date and the march, we've heard about it too. But we really ask what happened to sisterhood in the decades that followed, because that part of the story is harder to tell, and it is the part I want us to sit with today. Before I go further, let me tell you why this day has never been abstract history to me. It is personal geography. For a meaningful stretch of my life, my husband and I made our home in Pretoria, in the plush, quiet suburb of Waterkloof. He is a professional town planner, and I'm a professional artist. We built a life there, a full life. The estate we lived on, the openings and gatherings that came with both our vocations, the socializing that filled our calendar year after year. It was a fascinating time for both of us. But I want to tell you something. I only understood years later, something that reframed how I saw that address entirely. More than a century before I even unpacked a single box in Waterkloof, a young lawyer named Mohandas Gandhi boarded a train in Durban, a first-class ticket in his hand, bound for Pretoria on legal business. At a stop along the way in Pietermaritzburg, he was ordered out of that compartment because of the color of his skin. He refused. He was thrown off the train onto the platform that night. It was not the end of the story. That single act of injustice was the seed of everything he would go on to build, a philosophy of resistance that years later would in fact see him imprisoned more than once for refusing to bow to the very system that had humiliated him on that platform. Once I understood what that city had witnessed more than a century before I arrived, I could not unsee it. And I could not unsee either how differently I was treated in Pretoria, not just within the walls of the estate we called home, but in the city itself, in the shopping malls, in the boardrooms, and in the various places we socialized in where there were many people. I met in those very rooms a love that felt like real sisterhood. I also met its opposite, the small cuts of microaggression and the larger wounds of macroaggression, dressed up always as something more polite. As a visual artist, I don't have the luxury of looking away from what is in front of me. I am trained to notice light, distance, perspective, what is placed in the foreground, and what is pushed to the edge of the frame. So I began noticing that in rooms full of women too, who was centered, who was treated as decoration, and who was quietly being told who she was before she had ever been given the chance to say it herself. Dr. Miles Monroe put it this way: if you don't tell people who you are, they will tell you who you are. I think of the women who marched in silence to the Union buildings in that exact light. They did not wait to be defined. They walked in their thousands and let their silence tell Pretoria, tell this whole country exactly who we are. That defiance, quiet and total, is the inheritance I try to carry. In some way, every time I think of that city I once called home. In 1994, South Africa became a democracy. For the very first time, women of every culture, every race, and creed in this country stood on paper as equals. Many of us assumed that equality on paper would translate fairly quickly into closeness between us. We thought proximity would become cohesion. It didn't happen that way, and it's worth understanding why. Some women were born into a system that gave them personal privilege without their having to ask for it, question it, or build it. Others were born into a system that denied them that same privilege, where simply being recognized as a full human being was something that had to be fought for, established, and defended daily. Two very different starting points placed side by side in the same new democracy and expected to feel like sisters overnight. That was never going to be simple. It was, in effect, a sociological collision, and we're still working through it. Let me name three patterns that came out of it. One, if you grew up in a world where a woman like her was rarely seen, rarely heard, rarely given the room, her visibility may now unsettle you, even if you have never said so out aloud. That discomfort is not her fault. It's worth examining in yourself. Two, if you grew up in a world where women like her were routinely undermined, spoken over, or left out of decision making, her presence at the table may now bring out reactions in you that surprise even you. That reaction deserves honest reflection, not denial. Three, if you have only ever encountered her through stereotype, through what you were told about her kind, rather than through her actual life, you will misjudge her. Not because she is difficult to understand, but because you have not yet made the effort to understand her plainly. None of this is about guilt, it's about honesty. The only way to get through it is the same instruction those women modeled in 1956. Get close enough to see clearly. Get to know your sister, her history, her life, and why she is the way she is before you. Most women want deep connection, genuinely, but many keep running into the same wall. An unspoken tension between women that never gets discussed, only felt. And when that tension has nowhere honest to go, it tends to come out sideways. It comes out as competition, as jealousy, as exclusion, as quiet unkindness, dressed up as standards or humor. I call this Cinderella stepsister syndrome, and it is costing us our sisterhood. The stepsisters in that story did not resent Cinderella because of anything she did to them. They resented what she represented, grace and favor they had not learned to extend to themselves or to her. Rather than examine that discomfort, they tried to diminish her. Torn hymns, mockery, exclusion dressed up as standards. We do a modern version of this constantly, often without naming it. A woman is promoted, and the first response is suspicion rather than congratulation. A woman glows in her marriage and with her children and her new baby, and the first response is skepticism rather than joy. A woman shares a small win, and the room goes quiet instead of warm. If any of these three patterns I named a moment ago are unresolved in you, discomfort with her visibility, discomfort with her presence, or judgment based on stereotype, they will often surface exactly like this, recognizing that it is not an accusation, it is an invitation to do better. There is a second, quieter obstacle to real sisterhood, and it lives in our phones. We have started confusing watching a woman's life with knowing her, connecting with her. We follow her, we see her photographs, we read her captions, but we have no connection to her whatsoever. The quiet effort, the small private wins, that woman is not sharing with you. We're missing out on that because we choose not to really deep connect here. That is not connection. It is observation from a distance, and it can quietly slide into something less generous. Real sisterhood is slower than that. It asks more of us. It happens across a table, in a phone call, in a meaningful friendship, in showing up when there is nothing to post about. That is the only kind that tends to last. Mother Teresa put it simply, if we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to each other. That belonging is not built through a screen, it is built in person to person contact over time on purpose. But let's be fair to the woman on the other side of that screen for a moment. What if she is genuinely sharing her life? Not curating, not performing, actually letting you in, hoping it might inspire you, hoping it might win your trust and your heart. And still, it brings out every negative emotion, response, and behavior imaginable in the people watching. Because they choose to be threatened instead of moved. Because they choose comparison instead of connection. Because they choose to guard their insecurity rather than examine it. That is not her failure. A woman opening her life to you is not an invitation to resent her. It is an invitation to know her. What you do with that invitation says far more about you than it ever will about her. Before you comment on another woman's choices, her marriage, her children, her family, her body, her career, her silence, take the time to learn her story. Behind every woman's decisions is a chapter you likely have not read. She may not be distant. She may be protecting herself after being hurt by women who look just like you and me. She may not be arrogant. She may simply be tired of being misread. She may not be showing off. This may be the first time in a long while that she has had something to be proud of. Ask before you assume. Listen before you judge. There is an old teaching that says a tree is known by its fruit, not by its height or its branches, but by what it actually produces. So ask yourself honestly, what do other women experience after spending time with you? Do they leave feeling smaller or do they leave feeling seen? When your name comes up, is it followed by warmth or by caution? That is the honest measure, not what we say about sisterhood, but what we produce in the women around us. So, today on Women's Day, let us honor the women who stood in silence in 1956. And let us also be honest about the work that has been left unfinished since 1994. The work of truly knowing one another across our different histories, rather than assuming we already do. I still think of that city, Pretoria, the Pretoria that Gandhi was thrown off a train trying to reach, a century and more before I arrived to make my home there. I cannot undo what happened to him on that platform, but I can choose every day of my life to walk through that same city and every city in South Africa and the world to tell every woman who crosses my path who she is to me, clearly and out loud, so that no one else ever gets the chance to tell her wrong. Sisterhood is worthwhile when it's built with honesty, patience, and a genuine effort to understand where another woman has come from. That effort is not owed to us automatically. It is something we build deliberately, one relationship at a time. If you don't tell each other who you are, someone else will. Let's not let that happen to another generation of women in this country. Happy Women's Day to all my South African sisters in our beautiful land and abroad. God bless you all. This is Michelle Benjamin of the People of Purpose Talk Show.